Hi everyone, and welcome along to our New Year's Eve watercolour bubbles and beginnings. I hope you all had a great Christmas and looking forward to a painting filled 2026. And we're going to kick this off or end the year with bubbles and new beginnings. So we're going to be doing this in line and wash. That means you'll need fine line ink pen, either 0.3, 0.1. Pen will be great, waterproof. We'll be using our usual colours, so lots of Hansa yellow, burnt sienna, some Friends Grey. And also, if you have one, we'll be using an ink pen that isn't waterproof. So normally I'm always telling you make sure your pen's waterproof. In this instance, we're going for one that isn't because you can get some cool effects. Let me show you here. With one that's not waterproof, so we can activate that ink and let it bleed into the shape. It'll be really good for the bubbles. Don't worry if you haven't got one, you can just use your normal ink pen. This is by Stabilo. It's called a Stabilo 88 if you're interested in getting yourself one for your watercolour kit. So let's get started. So here we have my drawing. I've taken it a little bit larger so it fills my page, my pencil drawing. And with my waterproof 0.3 pen, I'm going to simply go round our lines. Nice and easy. And when you're either drawing, you can obviously draw your image down freehand or you can trace it down. I cheated today and traced it down because the shapes of these glasses can be a pain to get right. And you're just going to sketch in nice and loosely. Don't worry about broken lines. Coming into the base of the glass there. So keeping it nice and easy across the top of the glass. And we can just see the back of the glass inside. This one's tilted towards us so we can see the opening, so I'm making that opening more defined. Nice and sketchy. Up the other side of the glass. Don't worry about broken lines. I'm going to come across the liquid in the glass as well, very lightly. So even with whatever pen you're using, you can get a lighter line just by easing the pressure that you're putting down. You can get a stronger line by pushing down harder. Coming around the top of the glass and the broken foil. Down we come. I'm going to indicate some of the ridges where the wire was in the paper holding the cork on. And in the bottom of the foil where it meets the glass. I like to turn my page round so that I get a nice angle so I can keep my lines steady. And then our cork popping through the air. Wonderful. Now I'm going to put some indications of the pattern of the cork on. Just some little notches. Just very loosely playing on the nib of the pen. Creating that texture on the surface of the cork. Pressing lighter because I want a finer line. So I'm not pushing down on my pen, just keeping it loose. And then I've got this wine, the champagne, that's bursting into the air. So I'm going to use my fine liner pen in a few places, not all the way round this shape. It's quite an organic shape. And I'm leaving the bubbles. Don't go around your bubbles yet. Just the splashes of liquid going into the air. And I'll add some more of these as we go on. So remember, leave the bubbles clear. Just some shapes, some droplets. Now down towards the wine glasses, there's some bubbles. Now these ones I am going to indicate, but not the big bubbles. And some of them I'll do a full circle and others half a circle. There we go. And a couple of sort of bubble shapes within the liquid. Half bubbles, just cute little shapes. Fabulous. And that's how we're going to leave it for now. And we're going to have fun, first of all, with this water splashing out of the bottle. So let's mix up a colour for that. We want this kind of golden colour for our champagne. So I'm going to start as a base with my yellow, which is far too bright. Make a big puddle of yellow because we're going to be using a lot. And I'm going to put into that a little bit of burnt sienna. Touch of burnt sienna to make like a golden ochre colour. Kind of a mustardy yellow ochre. And let's try that down on our paper. Adding a bit more water to it to change it nice and light. I think a little bit more burnt sienna. To get the colour I want. That's better, isn't it? That's more champagne-y. Now we're going to have some fun. I want you to take clean water and we're going to paint in the splash shape, just with the water. Come within the shape to start with. Clean water, get it on there. And then with a smaller brush, I'm going to bring some tendrils of water out from that main shape. You need to work fairly fast for this, particularly where I've got gaps in the ink line. I'm going to extend, just put some puddles of water. We're going to have fun, see what happens. Okay. Then I want you to take your colour you've mixed and just drop it in randomly around your shape. Your puddle colour needs to be nice and watery, so it's going to flow. Then we're going to tip and tilt our page around and let this colour run down the page, tilt it all directions so it gets into those little tendrils that you've put down. And we get that nice natural splash. Just keep tilting your paper. Now there's a couple of places where my paper's dry, so I'm going to add a bit more water. You can continue adding water to ensure your splash does what you want it to do. goes where you want it to go, and in again. Tipping the paper, encouraging that colour to run. Adding a little bit more water at the end of these dribbles. Tilt it back the other way. And we get that wonderful swoosh of champagne coming out the glass. Now I'm going to let that dry back for a little while, and then I'm going to lift some colour out to reveal the white paper underneath. But at this stage, it's still very wet. A little bit of colour in that dribble there at the bottom. So you can tweak, you can add a bit stronger colour here and there, so it's a bit varied instead of one flat colour. So I'm choosing to come on the left of that swoosh and add a little bit more colour in. So it's varied, a little bit on the right as well, but not too much. Nice and simple. So whilst that's drying, we're going to come to our champagne in the glass. Okay, so I'm going to wet the champagne glass where the liquid sits within the champagne, but there's some highlights on the glass, so I'm going to leave a stripe of paper coming around the glass into our golden colour. In we go. I'm going to do one this way and one the other way, working on dry paper, so you can see which way you prefer. So making sure I leave this white highlight for the reflection on the glass. Lovely. Then with a damp brush blotted on your paper, I'm going to run along the edge of that white stripe so I don't get a hard line. There we go. One champagne glass. The other one I'm going to work wet on to dry. Very similar. So I'm going to take my colour, come along the edge of the glass down towards the bottom. I've lost my reference picture. There we go. Down the other side. And then there's a stripe in the middle. Okay, clean brush, blot it on your paper, make sure it's dried off. And then with that damp brush again, you're going to come into those white stripes. Make sure you don't have any colour left on your brush, just to soften the edge. Fab. Okay, I'm going to go back to glass number 1 and drop a bit stronger colour. Touch more burnt sienna. In that middle bit where the wine, the champagne is stronger. Wonderful. Just like that, we have our champagne glasses. Okay. Back to our champagne splash. Take your wet brush, blot it on your paper to make a thirsty brush, and I'm going to come in and take some of that colour out to leave some clearer liquid in the sky, in the air. It just gives you more of a variety of colour on the page. And in our glass, I'm going to add a little bit of lighter champagne, spilling up very random marks with my brush. And a few splashes at the top. There we go. Excuse me. Okay, we're going to let that dry off a little bit. Have a sip of our coffee or our champagne. And we're going to paint our cork next. So with the cork, I'm going to use the same base colour, just add more burnt sienna. Touch of yellow in there. And I'm going to paint this wet onto dry paper all over the surface of the cork. Keep it quite light, that's too dark. Nice and light, spread it out with a bit of water on your brush. All over the surface of the cork. And then take your paint creamier and add a touch of Friends Grey. Turn it a bit more brown. Much creamier. And we're going to go into the left-hand side of the cork where it's in shadow and just touch in this darker colour, wet into wet. Nudging it over the other side a little bit so I get this varied colour. Oh, now that I didn't want to happen. My champagne's still wet, so it's bled in. So I'll just take a thirsty brush. I don't want brown champagne. Soak that up. Then I'm going to go slightly more brown again, add in my combination of Friends Grey and burnt sienna. I'm going to come into the shadow a little wee bit stronger, just touching it into the wet paint, just a little bit, and let it do its thing. You can give it a little nudge with the tip of your brush if you want it to spread across the cork, touch further. A little bit dark around the base of the cork, and just under the neck, just under that neck, just in there. Wonderful. You can also lift out a bit of colour, remember, on a thirsty brush. I'm just lightening the right hand side a little bit. There we go. Okay, before I get any more bleeding, I'm going to dry this off. Whilst we've got these colours on the go, we're going to come down onto our bottle. I want this golden colour, not the brown. So adding more yellow to my puddle. This golden colour of the foil. It's very similar, if you look at the picture, to the colour we've used for the champagne. And in we go. Nice light colour to begin with, all over the foil. Just pulling my brush down the bottle. Okay, and then into more burnt sienna. A bit drier now. So don't have your brush too wet. And we're going to come down the foil to create some texture. I'm not doing a straight line. I'm just adding some variety. I'm kind of moving away from the reference picture a little here and having some fun. Lovely. They're nice and creamy again. So in a separate puddle over here, when my palette's drier, I'm mixing the burnt sienna and a touch of Friends Grey to darken it a little. Your paint should be creamy now because we don't want it to move so much. Coming down the edge of the bottle. Don't worry if you go over the lines. Keeping it nice and light and letting the pen do the work. And lastly, clean brush, blotted on your paper to make a thirsty brush. We're going to bring a highlight by lifting some colour off. So down the right hand side, kind of just off the centre, just dragging my brush through, taking that paint off, giving the highlight, but still with a hint of colour on the foil. There we go, and that's how I'm going to leave the foil. So I'm going to dry the foil off, and then we'll get onto the bottle. Excuse me. Okay, onto our lovely dark green then. Friends Grey. I'm going to add some phthalo blue. We want this nice and dark and creamy, so not too much water in your puddle. To make this indigo colour. And then in with our yellow. Just adjust it until you get the green how you want it. A bit more grey. A bit more yellow. But keep it creamy. Touch more blue in there. Making this bottle green. Lovely dark green, but with that hint of blue. Let me show you the colour. Beautiful. Okay, on to our bottle then. We're going to take this quite light over the body of the bottle, down the bottom. I've only got a corner sliver showing. And then into the top. We want this nice and light. Put your colour on and then spread it to fill it out with more water. And this will make the highlights on our bottle. Just going to lift off a bit of that highlight coming down from the highlight above. Just wiping off my tape there. And then at the top of the bottle, following that highlight, so it follows on from the highlight up the foil. We're going to take the highlight in the same position with your thirsty brush off the bottle. Just a damp brush, blotted brush. Keep cleaning your brush and swipe to take your colour off. And I just smudge that with my finger. Okay, just giving that a second at the top to dry in. Taking my creamy green now, and coming in the left-hand side of the bottle. Nice and dark, right up to the foil line. Lovely. You could go a bit darker still, just add a little bit more Friends Grey into the mix, a little bit more blue. Dropping that in, wet into wet. Watch your highlight doesn't fill in. It shouldn't do because you've dried it. I'm drying the edge of my paper. And with my size 6 brush, I'm going to go up to the top of the bottle. Nice and creamy again. A bit more yellow in there. On we go. Across the top of the bottle, avoiding the highlights, okay? We don't mind a sharp line, but that dark green comes all the way across the top of the bottle there. A little bit under the ridge. Leaving highlights for the clear glass showing through. A bit darker still, adding some more grey. I'm coming to the next notch of the bottle. Try not to put my finger in the wet paint. Coming across, nice and steady. The glass is thicker here, so it's darker. It should match the bottom of your bottle. And down to meet the foil. Coming along the side of your highlight and then the other side of your highlight, leaving that lighter green that we lifted out. Now where I see the glass is a bit lighter in this middle section, I'm just going to take some water on my brush, blot the brush again, and I'm just going to spread some of that green across. Pick up a little bit more and dot in. And into this very light bit, I want a bit more colour. So I'm just going to drag from the colour either side and pull across to create some reflections. Into that shiny bit, into that clear bit. That's the most fiddly bit of today, you'll be pleased to know. And we have the top of our bottle. Now, if you feel you've gone wrong or you want to drag a more of a highlight out, remember, take your damp brush and you can come in and lift out a little bit more of a highlight. You can always take off again. Just like that. Just bringing that right up to the foil there. I've got a little bit of a gap. Super. Okay. Time for the bubbles. I'm going to dry this off and we're going to have fun with those bubbles. Okay, so for those of you that have got an ink pen that bleeds, we're going to choose a bubble and we're going to draw lightly, not much pressure around the edge. I'm going to leave some gaps in that circumference. I'm going to take my wet brush and activate. Whoops, still had some green on it. Activate the ink. Let it bleed into the edges of the bubble. Just like that. We'll add a bit of colour in there as well. Just titivate that ink to encourage it to spread. Leaving some gaps around the bubble works really well. And some of our champagne colour. Drop that in. Maybe a touch of phthalo blue as well. Let's have some fun with these bubbles. Keeping a nice clear section in the middle. If you feel your bubble's gone too dark, you can just come in with a bit of tissue and tap into it. I'm going to do another one that way. I love this pen. I don't use this pen very often, but it's good when you're outside painting as well. Coming around the right hand side with a bit of a solid arc and then breaking up the line as I go round. Clean water. Touching into the edge. And using the ink that I pick up to fill in the gaps. Then into my champagne colour. A touch of blue. Just a little bit going into that grey. And we have another bubble. Now, if you don't have an ink activated pen, you can just use your fine liner the same way. So you're going to come around the edge, leave some gaps in the same way I did before. This time you're going to wet the inside. You might, if you're quick enough, you will get a little bit of a bleed. And then we're going to go into Friends Grey, around the edge, and you'll see you'll get the same effect as the bubble I've got above. Into our golden colour, drop that in, leaving a highlight. Alternatively, again, if you haven't got the pen, take your grey first. There's so many ways to do this. Bring your grey around the edge of the bubble. Add some water, a bit of your golden colour for the reflection, a touch of blue. And then do your ink afterwards. So I'm going to do the same with this one. Bring my grey, nice and watery with that grey. Add a bit of water, touch of your golden colour. And a touch of blue. Such fun. This way is quite easy actually. A grey, touch of golden. Try and keep a highlight in these. If it spreads too far, remember you've got your tissue to go in and tap out. One in the corner of the paper here. Some clearer than others. This one I might keep quite light down here near the glass. And a golden one here. And more of a golden one up the top. And then bring my grey in, just a tiny bit on the brush. Put some shadow around the side. Let it bleed into the yellow. I've got one next to the cork there. That one's going to be more golden. Touch of grey around the edge. Just touch in. You don't need much. Fabulous. Now I'm going to dry these off and finish with a bit of ink pen just to show you how I would finish those. Okay, into your normal fine liner if you're working this way. And remember, don't fill in. I've got hiccups, it must be the bubbles. You just want to do a few areas to come around one side, a little flick around the other. So you're leaving some edges open. Where else have we got to go in here? Have I got them all? There's a bit I've missed on the glass here, my fine liner pen. So in the corners of the glasses at the bottom, I'm just going to add that shadow under the bowl of the glass in the corners. Like a little triangle shape in the corners. And then to finish off, we're going to take some Friends Grey, really light, really watery, and we're going to come down that stem, down the middle, and onto the glass itself, a little bit of shadow on the side of the glass. Clean water. And just add in some water beside that grey that you've put on. And a touch of grey over the yellow in the glass, down the shadow side. Water. And let it fade out. And there we are. The other thing that I would do is come into the glass and add the bubbles. So I'm going to dry that off. You don't want to do it while it's wet. And then we're just going to put little dots of bubbles rising in the water. Some of them are just half circles. Cluster them together in places and then spread them out. Getting bigger as they come up the glass. Look at the reference picture. And on the other side, it's up to you how many you put in, how fizzy you want your champagne. Little dots and little half circles. I did a few more over this side. And then in a splatter of champagne, I'll do the same. Add some small dots and bubbles flying through the air. Add a few streaks, a few lines, indicating the swoosh. Very finely. I've got water everywhere. And a few more bubbles. I don't know how I've got it all wet. There we go. It's such a fun one to do. I do love the combination of ink and watercolour. It gives us that illustrative look. Really good to reproduce if you want to turn into a celebratory gift card. You could get them printed. Maybe a few more score lines along my bottle to add some texture. And I think we're done. I'm going to heat the tape off and remove. And then I've just noticed I drew a bubble that I taped over, so I want a straight edge there. Let me just remove that. And there we have our celebratory champagne painting. I hope you enjoyed painting that. Such a fun one to do. And think of how you can use your ink and watercolour together in other paintings. You come up with some ideas. I'd love to see your finished paintings. Let's fill up our Facebook group, Watercolour Wednesday, with your paintings of champagne and corks popping. Have a great new year, and I'll see you in 2026. Bye for now. Bye. Bye-bye.